to start today's session. Great. I'll just start the recording. Yes, it started. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the fourth ABSL IT Club by Ministry of Programming event in this year. Today, we have a certain bit of a different format, but I think you guys will enjoy it because we have not one, not two, but three speakers actually on board. And before we start, I would like to remind you on some householding rules from ABSL. First one is, and I actually see it right now, please during the session keep your microphones and cameras muted so we can all enjoy our speakers and actually learn as much as possible. Feel free to ask questions for the upcoming Q&A in the chat room or email us if you have a question after the session on info@absl.com, and BA will make sure that our speakers and moderator answer it modestly in time. And please feel free to ask questions because, we always have some struggles when it comes to asking questions. Short information is that club sessions, including the IT Club by Ministry of Programming, are being recorded for internal use of ABSL and, of course, for sharing the knowledge through our network. It is my pleasure to welcome today first, our dear friend from Ministry of Programming, their Vice President for Strategic Partnerships, Sara Lerota, who will moderate today's session, and of course, introduce our amazing speakers today, Jean-Louis and Marcel. So, Sara, the floor is yours.
Dear Adi, thank you very much for such a nice introduction. It is a true pleasure to join this webinar and to actually have this opportunity to just gather our thoughts together around this wonderful topic, especially when we have such amazing speakers such as Marcel and Jean-Louis, who are basically sharing the wisdom and their long time experience with us for quite some time already. And we are very happy to welcome them to this webinar, and also for all of us to have a chat. So basically this will be a very interactive session, and we will have a little bit of a conversation, but also later on we will also have a Q&A session, and I'm looking forward to seeing all the questions by our audience. And yes, when it comes to the introduction of Marcel and Jean-Louis, it's I could speak for an hour or so. I will be very short, and I will let Marcel and Jean-Louis to share some more information about their background and what their passion is all about when it comes to entrepreneurship and strategy and execution and everything that they've been working on so far. Marcel is definitely one of our master Yodas, so to say, when it comes to working with entrepreneurs as well, and also the dot connector, international dot connector all over the world. Jean-Louis is our master Yoda when it comes to entrepreneurship, finance, investments, working with startups, working with entrepreneurs, and we are very thrilled to have the opportunity to exchange our thoughts with them. And I would now like to invite Marcel and Jean-Louis to say a few words about themselves and about what they expect from this webinar as well. And just please feel free to share your thoughts. Thank you.
I guess, Jean-Louis.
Thank you, Marcel. So I was going to offer you also to start. So thanks for that. Thanks a lot, Sarah from MoP, from this very nice introduction. Thanks also, Adi, and all the ABSL team. So this is an honor this morning to be part of this webinar. Just in a nutshell, to understand and to put a context around what we are going to discuss this morning. Although I will let Marcel introduce himself, the two of us, we are part of a company called Entrepreneur Avenue that we founded. And the idea is very simple, and I hope that will help everyone to understand why we are here today. The idea of Entrepreneur Avenue is to offer first to startup entrepreneur the possibility to find, when you are working on an avenue, whatever you need. You need some market strategy, you need some finance, you need some help to raise money, you need some help to go abroad, and so on and so forth. So that's simply the idea of Entrepreneur Avenue. And on top of everything that we offer to entrepreneurs, we are passionate about entrepreneurship, especially when it's come to startup, innovation, and international business. We recognize that we do need to find investors. So in fact, if you like, we have also this investor avenue, and Marcel and I, with Entrepreneur Avenue, we are also passionate. We are ourselves for more than 15 years business angels. We invest in companies, and we do want to help also new business angels to be convinced this is the right things to do to help most of the time their local entrepreneurs. So I will almost stop there. I just would like to add one other quick point regarding what I'm passionate about. All my career, I've been an engineer, and I work in microelectronics and AI, artificial intelligence. And today, I'm really working to have running a new Europe IA capital. So this is a French name, which is a way to find funding for any AI, artificial intelligence startups. So that's also about entrepreneur. That's also about investment. On top of that, there will be a lot to say, but I guess I will let Marcel introduce himself, and I'm sure that will be easier to answer to Sarah's question to provide more background and insight about what we are doing. Marcel.
Thank you, Jean-Louis. My name is Marcel Dridje. I'm the former president of Sophia Business Angel, a club of investors in Nice. And at the same time, I'm on the board of EBAN, which is the European Business Angel Network. What made me awake today with me and my friend Jean-Louis, we're very, very passionate about the whole ecosystem of startup investors and entrepreneurship. And one of the things that we had in common, we've been ourselves serial entrepreneur, and I will add intrapreneur as well. So personally, I come from Cisco. I came into Cisco through an acquisition of one of the startups I was involved with called Airspace. And the whole idea of the particular audience that we have today is really to walk you through that there's a vision out there. You know, you have to start up with a vision. And I'll let Sarah later on ask us the questions and make it dynamically type exchange. And at the end of the day, we're here to share with you in a humble way what we call return from the field experience. We're not inventing anything. We're not professors from INSEAD or HEC. The theory is something, but what me and Jean-Louis like doing is sharing in a genuine way our humble experience from the field. What worked for us, what completely did not work for us, what the kind of thing we failed, and therefore I hope this interaction with you will be plenty of information and useful, what I call practice. Thank you. Back to you, Sarah.
Thank you very much for such awesome introductions. We will be very, very to the point. So basically, the topic of this webinar is the key of strategy is in its execution. Can you tell us something more about this topic and what did it mean for you over the years so far?
Mr. Jean-Louis, you want to carry on?
Go ahead for this time, Marcel.
Okay, so let me really centralize the conversation, Sarah, about the word execution. I think all the entrepreneurs by nature have their own personal journey. You know, there's no one entrepreneur that look at the other entrepreneur in the same level. At the end of the day, it's all about a structured way of tackling business. Sometimes you do it with your hunch. Sometimes you ask questions to the circle of friends or to your mentors. But what we've learned from all those successful IPOs, those successful exits from an M&A perspective, I was fortunate enough to work for 4 of them from scratch, all the way to IPO on the NASDAQ, and to a couple of them that went through a merger and acquisition with major corporates. And what I've learned at the end of the day, the founder will wake up one day and says, I want to change the world. And by the way, shame with you, shame on any one of us as entrepreneurs just to think in that little local marketplace. You have to think global. That's one of the tips that I always give to entrepreneurs. So you wake up with a vision and then say, there's a need out there for such a solution. You have to be customer obsessed about the whole idea. And is there a market fit? And then you're going to be structured in such a way to say, okay, vision will help me share my story with my next team members, with my next investors, with my next mentors. But the vision in general does not change, because this is the whole DNA that you're passing on to the whole company. And then out of the blue, you're faced with a strategy. And the strategy basically is, this is the fun part. This is the area where it can change sometimes, because you wake up one day and you said to all of us, over my dead body, I'm building a business with B2B. I'm going to be a SaaS company. And this is exactly my dream. And this is where I'm going to go. But guess what? In a humble way, sometimes you make mistakes and you say, maybe I should be thinking of changing strategy. Maybe it was not B2B. It could be white labeling. It could be a B2B2C. It could be a channel. It doesn't matter what it is. So Sarah was pertinent talking about execution. Well, guess what? Any entrepreneur, when they surround themselves with the right team, the execution is not only for the leader. The leader is there to inspire, to empower the whole team. So you being in the technical side, you are in the marketing side, you are in the sales business dev. Doesn't matter what role and responsibility you have to have some KPIs. You have to have some KPIs to execute. And execution is all about reviewing things. You know, if you wake up one day and say, I'm the CTO, version 1.0 need to be ready in the next 45 days, you should be accountable. The same thing with the sales guy that says, I have 2 purchase orders in the work or 2 proof of concept. Well, guess what? You have to be accountable for that. And from a CEO perspective, from the founder, he'd be sharing with the team that I'm meeting investor A, investor B. He'd be saying to a customer A or B that my first version will be ready in the next 30 days. So the CEO as well is accountable. So this is the whole team spirit. I'm going to stop there, Sarah. Jean-Louis.
Yes. Yes, Sarah, I was not sure if you wanted to add some things to the question. So I think, of course, Marcel described it very well. The key point, and I will be short here, when we talk about strategy, when we talk about execution, this is really to be able to question ourselves as an entrepreneur, even as an investor at any time, and to be in a position where the entrepreneur should consider to pivot, should consider to do something else. And to do that, you need data. So I guess we mentioned that already, Marcel mentioned that already. The KPI are the keys for the execution. I will call it the dashboard. One of the first things I'm asking an entrepreneur when they would like us to look at how we can help, we have a couple of questions. And one of these questions is, what is the dashboard that you have in front of you? This dashboard is how not only the entrepreneur, but also the investors are looking at your business, and not only what you have been doing, but where you are going. I mean, you cannot drive a car without a dashboard, or it should be fully automatic, but the full automatic car, we are not there. Same thing for the entrepreneur. You still need to drive, to pilot your business. So again, everything is really in the execution, and be flexible, be in an attitude, starting by us. The key for us is only we got several experience. So we are lucky that we went worldwide in different type of situations, but this is not because of this experience that we will have the answer. Now we are in a position to teamwork, and that's a key word for me, to teamwork on the strategy, and the execution, because there is no strategy without an execution. So that's what I would like to add to this question, to this point.
Thank you very much, Jean-Louis and Marcel. Based on what you just shared with us and looking at the audience that we have currently participating in this webinar, we have a really nice combination of both entrepreneurs, people and organizations and companies working with entrepreneurs, but also companies who are going from this stage of early stage companies to a middle stage, and the number of employees is getting bigger and they are facing certain challenges of growth. So how would you connect the strategy and growing of the company and tackling all the challenges that one company can have while growing from 20 people company to 200 people company, and what would be the most important thing for you to share as yes, the most important thing that they should take in consideration during that process?
Okay, you go ahead, Jean-Louis.
Well, but if I answer, and I will
Go.
let you go, I will steal a word out of your mouth, I guess. Think global. When you discuss about the growth for a company, you don't want just to look at what they are doing today in their market today. The one word I would like to give as an answer, which of course we need to elaborate, it think global. Look at around all possible opportunities and then build a plan to execute, and we come back to the execution side. So Marcel, I let you add more details.
Okay, let me be more pragmatic and put myself in the shoe of what Sarah was asking. You're starting a business and you're going to go towards SME level one day, and maybe you're going to be acquired by big corporates, or you are right there at the scale-up methods and you're raising your round A. It doesn't matter where you are in the stage. There's a couple of things that I've learned in my humble experience. So think about me working for, I think, 7 top round A, West Coast, US tech, hardware, software, combination of both, cybersecurity, telecom, computer storage, you name it. I was basically technology agnostic. I was just passionate about, I call it, the entrepreneur loved the sentence, I call it the white page syndrome. Somebody would throw a white page at you, and they give you a pen, you have your brain, and you say, how can I help this US West Coast company to come to Europe? I'm just giving you an example from a go-to-market strategy. So strategy is not just for techies, it's not for product management, it's not for marketing. All those roles and responsibilities have to have a strategy. So I basically going to share with you from a go-to-market strategy. They give me the page and say, you are going to Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Just think about the sheer task as a territory. Think about the sheer task about those diversity, like when you are in Bosnia, when you're based in France, when you're based in Sweden, when you're based in Greece, Israel, South Africa. Just think about how wide that territory. And you have to think for a second and say, should I do it at a cowboy styles and or like the farmer puts a lot of seeds everywhere and see what happens? I don't think so. I think you should go through that process to make mistakes, which I did. But you do it once, you do it twice, and then you learn a couple of KPIs and a couple of tips. One of the things I've learned, you really have from a go-to-market perspective, it's very easy to say Europe. But guess what? As you're sitting in Bosnia, when I brought these US companies to the European marketplace, I had to be structured. I had to be, what's the word, analyzing. A lot of analytics have to be going into your thoughts. And one of them is say, let me divide Europe into 3 different regions. And I'm going to challenge each one of you, including a big size company, corporate, or an SME you are, or you are early stage. I'm going to challenge you in a nice way for you to think about it. I call it food for thoughts. Europe, I always sold to what I call Scandinavia, Northern Europe, UK. That is one patch. And the reason why I did that is because they are early adopter. Even today, even the shift from deep tech, hardware, software, SaaS, doesn't matter what it is. This territory by default is the early adopter continent. So you have to think about that. And then I'm going to go to the second largest European area called Central Europe, Germany, Central Europe, mostly DACH, Austria, Switzerland, Germany. These guys I put them as the second priority. And then I leave last France and Southern Europe. And what I've noticed is even today, there's an interesting way of strategizing your thoughts, is to say, although I was successful in inserting in a short time my solution, my product in Northern Europe, well, those guys are not loyal on the long term because they are early adopter and they want to try things, new things. And Southern Europe, although I left it last, they are the biggest, largest loyal on the long term when it comes to bigger contract and be loyal to you, because I guess for the Latin culture, they want to get to know you. And the problem is it's the longer sales cycle. But for the new digital technology, new digital transformation, who cares? I was talking to Adi earlier on, who cares where you are today? But guess what? You still have that food for thoughts. How are you going to sell into European marketplace? You know, still Northern Europe is special, still Central Europe is different, and Southern Europe, even if you are selling from anywhere. So that's what I want to share with you. Sarah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thanks a lot, Marcel and Jean-Louis. Just adding to what you just shared regarding the international aspect and reaching new markets and having also new persons as a part of your team all over the world, how do you translate strategy to people working in different locations, in different environments, tackling different issues, tackling different challenges? How do you translate that vision and basically that strategy to them, and also encourage and empower them to bring that strategy all the way through the final stages of execution?
Let's start.
I can start. I have no issue. I'm just being
okay. Please, go ahead, and then I will.
Thank you, Sarah, for that pertinent question. It's fascinating. When I walked in from a startup, with 75 people on my team into the bigger giant, successful giant called Cisco, well, the first thing they empowered me, it's all about empowerment. They say, welcome to the most diverse company in the world. It's like Apple, like Google. And I found myself with 17 different nationalities on the 4 continents. So your question is very pertinent. One of the things I've noticed, I think we're all human around the world, is to have that kind of humbleness in saying, well, guess what? A guy based in Texas with his own local culture selling to Verizon, and the guy who's sitting somewhere in Dubai selling to Ooredoo Telecom, or a French guy selling to Orange or to AXA insurance company, he's having his own culture and his habits. And what I've learned is, to be frank with you, it's all about respect of this fantastic, diverse team, empowerment. And one thing I always say, this is from a teamwork, I say, guess what, guys? Please, 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 you can be a hero if you win by yourself in your local country, whatever you're trying to do, technically or selling or marketing. But please, one piece of warning, do not lose by yourself. So that's why I encourage this particular way of thinking. If you are struggling and you are part of a remote team, because one of the challenges that we have today with this remote calls, thanks to COVID, I guess, but this has been going on for many years, when you are in remote locations, is that loneliness. Sometimes you have one rep sitting in the middle of nowhere, and it's up to you as the leader to make sure that he's not feeling that kind of loneliness. How do you do that? Regular calls, regular team meetings, and at the same time, you can actually, on a personal basis, this is my style of management, was to care about that particular person challenges. So it's not just about work, it's not just about being successful, but it's getting to know that person as a human being and understanding what could be his challenges. And you know, and I know, Sarah, some of us love to work by ourselves. We love to be in an office and we don't want to meet anyone because we can be more creative. But the nutshell in all this, it's once in a while putting a team together on a call and trying to maybe wishing a birthday to a colleague of yours that is based in the other extended office. Remembering, by the way, the birthday dates, I think from a management perspective, that always helped me. So yeah, it's about respect, empowerment, and making sure that that particular person that you empowered, he doesn't lose by himself because he's worried to give you the bad news. He should be reaching out to you and you help him through the problems and challenges.
That's a great answer, Marcel. If you allow me, Sarah, just to add probably just two key points to translate the strategy working worldwide. The first things this is to build an experience and first to listen. I'm lucky I got an international career, and that's why I love to share that today with entrepreneurs. What I learned, especially when I was working for an American company based in the Silicon Valley, I was in charge of building new product, working on the innovation side, not selling, building the innovation, which is quite close to what will be the next strategy, the next step for the strategy. I work in the States with top companies, very large company in Europe and in Japan. And you are not building a trust that you need when you really want to share a roadmap and you want to get the roadmap from very large companies. I'm talking about big guys, very large company, like if I pick a few names, it's Cisco that Marcel was working for in the state, but that's Ericsson at this time, Siemens and Alcatel in Europe, and that's also Sony and some other very large Japanese companies. So first, listen, learn to avoid mistakes, and everyone will do mistakes. And we are not all doing business the same way, but somehow we all want to go into one direction, and this one direction is building relationships. I believe what animates us, and I will say Marcel and I guess, it's what we love to do. We are working with entrepreneurs, we are working with investors, we are working with great partners like MoP, the Ministry of Programming. And overall, this is the relationship that we are building that will help, to come back to your question, Sarah, to translate this strategy into execution, not the same way with different type of people. And I will continue, I guess, to be passionate about this fine-tuning on how you translate this strategy, depending where you are and who you are working with. And if I can help some of our entrepreneurs that we are mentoring to do that and to have one foot on in Europe, for example. We are also working a lot, Marcel and I, with African-based companies. That's really something which is just great. I mean, it's helping someone to move ahead and to execute his or her strategy.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Basically, when it comes to, for example, Europe and Africa, what would be your insights about the differences? How do you adapt strategy based on these two territories? What would be the main the main points that you two take in consideration when it comes to approaching these two territories and people from these continents?
Thank you, Sarah, for giving us. I can see my friend Jean-Louis laughing,
Yes.
and smiling, because I know he loves the African challenge when it comes to putting them right there. So I was humbled enough to be at EBAN, and Candice and I, with Jacopo, we thought about the African continent 7 years ago. And we were trying to find some data. How much money is flowing to Africa 7 years ago? And this is all facts and can be checked publicly. Then we came across VC for Africa, small company based in Holland, where they were trying to track, and they're still tracking that data. What's amazing is, at that time, 7 years ago, we could track about $1.2 million, euros, now that we have the equity, on the business angel. And by the way, this is what you call the visible market. As long as it's visible, you can track it, right? And then we heard about 2 months ago, that number grew to 3 billion. So that shows you, Sarah, what's happening in Africa. What's happening is a lot of bright people out there that are challenged basically to change their lives, to change their family lives, their village lives. And I'm humble enough, me and my friend Jean-Louis, we were there at the forefront, starting in North Africa, helping the whole ecosystem in Tunisia and Morocco. And here's the good news, we can report back. Algeria was completely absent, and President Macron went there about 3 weeks ago. This is public, you can see what's happening there. And suddenly there's a fund of 400 million announced in Algeria. There's a couple of incubators, accelerators being there. We worked with Nigeria, Lagos, with South Africa. And what I can say to you is, at the end of the day, we, based in Europe, are fortunate enough to have what I call a more mature ecosystem, meaning the EU Commission is unleashing all those grants that are coming into the hands of creativity, be it in Bosnia, be it in France, be it in Germany, it doesn't matter where it is in Europe. I think definitely the EU was absolutely igniting that in Europe. In Africa, I mean, we really had to really work hard to make sure that we're bringing the ecosystem up to a level. But the good news, from my part, the market is absolutely huge in all fronts. One of the quizzes, I can ask a question to the audience. Where did the first e-payment solution happen in the world? That's an interesting, and people are puzzled because, you know, we are Westernized and we think about Apple Pay and we think about all those BNP Paribas fintech companies. And well, guess what? M-Pesa, based in Kenya, was the first one that had that fantastic. The reason why? Because you have this extraordinary convergence of technology, mobile per habitat absolutely went wild in Kenya. At the same time, they don't have banks. They're not bankable, as we say. They don't have that e-banking, as we're fortunate enough. The next thing you knew, you have this ecosystem building where people that are selling their crop will come in and give cash in a plastic bag to a physical location bank. In exchange is an e-credit on your mobile phone. Just think about it. Just think about it. So I'm really, really optimist going forward about African countries. Here is one thing throw back at you, Sarah. I see it with Jean-Louis in Morocco, in Algeria, in Tunisia. Unfortunately, we wish we can change it. It's what we call the brain drain of from an African. Brain drain from UK, Cambridge, Oxford, back to the US. It's okay. We know what happened in Silicon Valley. But right now, as the African continent is moving ahead with this fantastic ecosystem of startups, we're concerned maybe that because they're thinking only about the Tunisian marketplace, which is small, maybe the North African, which is slightly bigger. But at the end of the day, the revenue from a go-to-market perspective and business development, unfortunately, some of them are thinking to come and land in Europe to basically be successful. And one of the one I can actually share with you is a company called InstaDeep, just as it's spelled. You can spell it, you can see it on Google. InstaDeep, a fantastic small Tunisian company with AI. Can you believe that? With IP around AI. And they're helping Pfizer and Micron and all the guys that are doing COVID forecasting of the next variant, helping them with a fantastic algorithm, AI, very sophisticated. And guess who was the first investor? Is Google themselves. And they just raised 100 million. So I'm very optimistic about Africa as a whole. And I'm challenging all the Bosnia-based entrepreneurs, when they think about a go-to-market, think about the African continent, because that will be the next revenue stream that is going to be coming out. Mostly maybe Nigeria, English-speaking, Nigeria, South Africa. That's what the more mature marketplace. And North Africa, which is a French-speaking countries. But it's a huge market for them as well. Jean-Louis.
So, of course, I agree with you. Now, I would like to sit back, going back to your question, Sarah, which is an excellent question. What are the main differences between Europe and Africa? And I'm going to answer, there is no difference. In fact, when I say there is no differences, I sit back, as I said, and I look at it before any entrepreneur or startup start to raise money. After, Marcel just discussed it, effectively, the ecosystem, the environment is not the same, let's be honest. So when we have the chance to work with entrepreneurs, they could be based in North Africa, they could be based in South Africa, they could be based everywhere. And when they are in this innovation phase, which is before they start to raise money, the good news is everyone is using today the web, the internet, and this is global. Everyone is learning somehow the same way. I'm not saying that all the universities are the same, but when you look at it, the top entrepreneurs, few of them are effectively coming from top universities, but a lot of them are coming from their own experience. So really, when we start to work with entrepreneurs at the very beginning, during the innovation phase, the invention, the new product, the ideas of businesses are really the same. There is no differences. Now, having said that, we have to recognize there are differences effectively. And these differences are not just between Europe and Africa. Marcel mentioned that. You are not in the same environment. You don't have the same ecosystem when you start in Morocco, in Algeria, in Tunisia, in these North African French-speaking countries. And you need to consider how to open some of the markets, but you also need to look at what are the markets for entrepreneurs which are sitting somewhere else. I do have an example that you know very well, Sarah, because it's a South African example of a startup that we met, and we met great entrepreneur thanks to you because of your partnership. Things I can publicly mention this name. The startup is called Biocertica. So why I'm mentioning Biocertica? They are in Cape Town, in South Africa. They are working with you, Ministry of Programming, for a long time. And a couple of months ago, you put it in touch. Guess what? We opened a very small door for them to come to Europe. And they rush to come to Europe. And we are building here a real bridge for them between what they develop based on their company in South Africa and the European market. And really going back to one of the initial questions, the key here with them, it's really to think global. So that's an example of a company. These guys are sitting in Cape Town. They are really great entrepreneurs, but they can come really from almost anywhere and execute. Now, all the key will be the execution for them, which will be almost a worldwide execution for sure, a global execution. So, Sarah.
Amazing, amazing. Speaking of Africa and everything that you mentioned, I recently saw a documentary. They were showing a little bit of like a traveling bits and pieces around Africa, and one of the main characters in the documentary went to buy some ice cream in a nearby store, and he wanted to pay by cash, but it wasn't actually an option. They had a number that was drew on one of the walls by chalk, and he actually had to send the money through this channel of payment. It was just like amazing, and they all have these cell phones and numbers, and it's working. The system is working actually.
Let me, if you have 1 minute, just to give you another example, what you just said, Sarah, about this e-payment in Africa. There is this guy that me and Jean-Louis met at the camp before COVID, and he came in to be mentored and to go to Vivatech and see if he can raise money. So the guy kind of surprised us. He says, I have 10 bikes, and this is what I do. So me and Jean-Louis were surprised. He said, interesting. I don't think this will fly here in Europe. And the bikes were, listen to this, from the city, going to villages, having a power bank at the back of the bike, and recharging for small, tiny fee, very, very small, the famous mobile phones that the village farmers have. And he says, but don't be fooled. That is just for me to have a loyal trust from the chief of the village. Because the chief of the village will aggregate all the cereals, all the crops once a year, and he will have cash in a big bag. So I will show him on the phone the app, M-Pesa, as I mentioned earlier on, and suddenly, instantly, I will open an account for him virtually because there's a trust element. So think about it. The next thing he knows, the chief of village asked him a question. He says, I only have one pain point: education, education, education. So that same company, by accident, talking about pivoting, mentioned many times how many times you can pivot the company, that became a solar panel installer in that village, which means they had their own charger for their own phones. Next thing you knew, they built an internet cafe with a donation, with a couple of PCs for the kids to start having an e-learning sessions. How about that? So technology does
beautiful, amazing.
Yeah. That's called the hustler entrepreneur spirit.
Exactly, amazing.
Yeah. If I may, you ask questions, Sarah, and it's a fire chat, and I will try to be very short, but I think I really would like to add something to your question about Europe and Africa, which is from the investor side. This last 12 months, Marcel and I, we have been mentoring 2 new groups of business angels, women business angels, one in Egypt, one in Tunisia, and we are talking about doing more. Guess what? Their approach, they are very professional. They had a great career to arrive at the point where they would like to give back by being business angels in their own countries. And to me, this is a typical example where from the investor side, there is absolutely no difference. When we have been working on, we really enjoy working with these 2 groups. there is absolutely no difference. Their goal is more to invest in women entrepreneur businesses, and that's great because especially in some of those countries, it's very important. But I guess what I like to say before maybe we move to something else, because we can discuss 2 hours about Europe, Africa, and on this topic, so for sure. So please consider that before the fundraising and before the overall ecosystem is something which is very important for an entrepreneur. You can start almost any business anywhere, and then the differences will come not from the country where you are from, but the relationships, the execution, and whoever you are going to meet, which will help you to grow. I will stop there, Sarah.
Thanks a lot, especially for the inputs about Africa. I know how thoughtful and passionate you are about the whole area and everything that you've done in the area. So thanks for sharing some really concrete inputs there. We travel quite a bit, you know, from Europe to Africa to the global perspective as well. If we take all that in consideration, if someone is basically running the company, the team is running the company, and regardless if it's small or medium size or large, there is this question of, okay, there is this wide, vast world, and then on the other side, we actually need to make a decision what's important when it comes to creating our strategy and what is not that important. So how do we create that kind of a focus to create a strategy that has all the elements necessary for it to succeed, but also does not have a lot of these elements that are not essential? So we have a concrete focus and a timeline to also go with it.
Okay, so let me answer your question with one angle to start with. You know that I'm passionate about innovation and finance for entrepreneurs. So I will look at the innovation side, and I will look at one piece of the strategy which I'm using for more than 25 years today, the Blue Ocean Strategy. And the Blue Ocean Strategy, which I can, of course, talk about it, I will try to summarize the concept. It's well known, and probably I'm sure that most of you who are listening to us, you know the Blue Ocean Strategy, or you hear about the Blue Ocean Strategy. Maybe you read the book. But the key is really to execute and to use these tools. The key here is, or the concept, very simple. When you go into a market, and when you go directly in what you believe is your market, you have competition, which it's a good sign, because we are always saying there is no market without a competition. But if you have direct competition, if you are a small startups, the other one are like shark who got only one thing in mind. This is to bite you, and then you will start to swim in what we would call a red ocean because of all the shark which will try to go where you will have as a competitor. On the other side, coming back to your question, what will be the strategy to go to a blue ocean? So the blue ocean strategy is really move away from your competitors. And really what I like to say on a concrete way here, my answer is for any single entrepreneur and startup, especially when you are new, define your market and try to define a market where you will be almost alone, but you don't have in mind only to beat the competition, because this is not where you want to put your energy. Put your energy to offer a very nice solution to your customers to solve one of their problems by a unique position. And just to close on this market strategy, on this blue ocean strategy, the good news is there are lot of cases. And what we learn, Marcel and I, and what we love to do, it's always to look at examples for any business who come to us for help, and that's true for everyone. So there are many cases which will help to look at, hey, this is an example, and most of the time when it's execute well, this blue ocean strategy, that will be good for 5-10 years, and then you can always continue to build. So that one piece of answer. I'm sure, Marcel, you will have some other point for sure.
Thank you, Jean-Louis. As you mentioned, from a product management, a product fit, innovation, I will jump into my sweet spot and tell you with a concrete example what happened in that particular international. We talk about international in general. Think about year 2000. I'm sure that most of the listeners to the call, including you, Sarah, if you remember year 2000, it was only 22 years ago. And this is where the whole NASDAQ crashed. And think about me thinking I am in the telecom, networking, until this particular crash happened. And then 2001, I was fortunate, lucky, I guess, to join a company doing Wi-Fi into the enterprise. So suddenly I had to put myself into an enterprise go-to-market. And by the way, I did not have any experience at all. So remember the blank page syndrome I mentioned earlier on? My friend in the US, they're having fantastic sales revenue going to sell directly to what we call campus enterprise. The Microsoft campus in Seattle, the Wall Street trading wall, Airbus versus Boeing, into where they're making, and they were looking how can they help them with the Wi-Fi for the enterprise. And I'm sitting in Europe and I'm supposed to do something by myself. So talking about disruptive thinking, every entrepreneur has to think how he can be disruptive. Disruptive doesn't mean just what Jean-Louis mentioned from a technology perspective. You have to have that thinking. But even across the role and responsibility, you have to think disruptive. So in my humble experience from a go-to-market, I said, how can I catch up with my US friends? Being by myself, just kicked off the sales office in 2001. Everything is crashed. No more CapEx, no more money to be spent. And I decided to go where people were not expecting me to do. And this is what I talk about, my go-to-market business models. When do you do B2B, B2B2C? When do you go white labeling, etc.? And I found out that Alcatel Enterprise in France had a compelling event. Please, entrepreneurs that are listening, I know that you're thinking about revenue generation, but sometimes I'm challenging you. Think about that compelling event about resolving a customer pain. Every single customer out there, today, tomorrow, in the next 100 years, a customer A, customer Z, they have pain points to resolve. So I was fortunate enough, talking about the network, that's something else I always give as a tip to entrepreneurs, network, 24 hours a day, you have to be networking because you'll be amazed what you get. And I found that Alcatel Enterprise were looking very severely, literally handicapped. They don't have an internal technology solution when it comes to Wi-Fi for the enterprise. And remember what's happening in 2001? This thing called bring your own device. A lot of companies were asking employees, you have an iPad, or you have an iPhone, or you have an Android. This is your own personal belonging. let us build an infrastructure in the enterprise to bring your own device. So it was roaming, it was security issues, you name it. So Alcatel was looking for a Wi-Fi solution, and I managed to convince them to do a white labeling contract. So they gave me the color code of their product line hardware, routing, switching, they were doing that. And they asked me to use our own software to enable that particular solution. Well, it was a multi-million-dollar contract, I can tell you that. But I'm just basically sharing with you that sometimes disruption thinking should happen across the verticals within the team, as long as that founder is thinking in disruptive mode. So sometimes you compete, it's okay. And by the way, Wi-Fi, we had hundreds of competitors. Why we're different? Because we are in a disruptive mode. Because some companies are not thinking, why should they white label? That means I'm going to cut the margin of my product. But guess what? Time is the essence. Why should you miss the boat? So why should I talk about 100K with 50% markup, or I can talk about multi-million-dollar contract going squeezed to 30% markup? Do the maths, guys. So that's my pragmatic way of thinking worldwide, internationally. Use that thinking. The way you sell into a territory could be completely different from another territory. Back to you, Sarah.
Wonderful. Thank you for these concrete examples, especially when it comes to these concrete numbers and what it meant at the time and what it means right now, currently. We have one question by Abdallah, but I also know that Adi is having some words to share with us. So I would like to invite Adi to share a few thoughts, and then we can continue as well with Abdallah's question.
Okay, Monsieur Jean-Louis.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Jean-Louis and Marcel. It was really a pleasure to listen to you today and to learn actually something more about strategies and how it can be done. But what our community is curious to know, when it comes to strategies, we know they come from C-levels mostly, but how to translate them more efficiently to a team. That's a question that we get asked a lot also in the ABSL. So please provide us with the right answer, so to say.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Jean-Louis.
Yes, thanks, Marcel. When it comes to your team, to me, this is very simple. We are talking about building relationships. And here, if you want your team to execute with you properly a strategy, you have to involve them when you build the strategy. So it doesn't mean that everyone, all your team should be spending all their time doing strategy. This is not at all what I'm saying. Of course, if you have a team, you need to split the work, and basically, not everyone will do the same thing. So otherwise, it's just useless. Now, if let's say, if we need all together, I'm looking at everyone today who came to this webinar, listening to us. Let's say we would like to build just a one step in our strategy to say, okay, how can we do better webinar? Because there are always ways to improve. Well, to me, the right things to do will be to collect information from everyone. So to involve everyone, to try to listen, and then to work on our side on what will be the next step in terms of strategy. So for a company, for a startup, that's the same things. The key is people, everyone feel would like to be involved, feel good if they feel that that's some things they have a chance, of course, to change the decision. Otherwise, to be efficient, it's also a question of being very concrete and very organized. I know we are talking about strategy, and this is not because we are talking about being efficient with strategy. We don't need to be organized. Very often, very concrete example, what I'm doing with startup. We will discuss about the strategy. We will define some things. We will listen to people, and then we have a plan. It's very important to say, let's try to execute for the next 2 months or the next 4 months. So, and let's make sure that for a given time, we agree that we are moving from strategy to execution. And then 4 months later, we look at it and eventually we decide to do something else or to pivot or to fine-tune only some things. So I guess in a nutshell, if I summarize what I'm trying to explain to everyone, this is listening, and in the execution, make sure there is enough time to look at what a given strategy, what are going to be the effect before anyone say, oh, no, it's not working, we need to do something else. No. You can clearly communicate, so the communication will be the key. Marcel.
Thank you, Jean-Louis. I think I'm going to be much more pointed to a personal experience of mine. I've been obsessed with customer pains. I've been obsessed with market fit. I've been obsessed about a team building exercise, and I've learned my mistakes. And I think it goes to a nutshell. The nutshell is the framework called VSEM, Vision, Strategy, Execution, and Metrics. The S is for strategy. What's important about this question from Sarah? I think a founder, when he has a vision, it seldomly changes. I mean, that's how he acquires knowledge to, when he starts building his team, he's sending them the vision. He's not sending them a strategy. Once the team is together, shame on him if he's not empowering every single team member of his. I've heard that maybe C-level, that's why it happens. I disagree. Most of those successful strategies, I think it might be cooked or planified by C-level, but all successful strategies have one thing in common. They all have empowerment, team empowerment. They all have feedback from an obsession with customer pain points. So this is both a feedback from the customer, from the field. This is both from the distributor or the partner that you signed up somewhere in the world. This is from the engineer that is coding. I go further than that and being a bit disruptive here. Even the receptionist, if you have a receptionist somewhere, that is the call center that is picking up phone. I think you have to have that capacity of empowering every single team member so you are basically going in the same direction. Something else that I see a lot of startups failing is because they're not challenging themselves that a strategy can change. A strategy can change. There's no worries about that. But collectively, you have to really make sure that you're inclusive of every single team member. When you are a small team, let me be very clear on that. As the company is growing, then you're going to be having leadership posting. That particular leadership responsibility is to make sure that their own team, like a sub-team, to be inclusive when he's thinking about a particular strategy, so he can report back to the founder and to the C-level. So my nutshell takeaway here, empowerment, team play, and making sure that learn from your mistake. There's nothing wrong, for God's sake. You go against the wall and you say, I'm not strategy. This is the one I'm going to be successful with. Wrong. How many people were successful where they were going nowhere from a strategy perspective, and they decided to pivot, to go somewhere else? The same core technology, the same product line, but they pivoted because the strategy is changing, because they learned feedback both from the team and the customer. I always put the customer in the heart of my strategy anyway. So that's in a nutshell what I can share with you.
Thank you, Marcel. I see that Adi is also commenting in the comment section, and that he's grateful for your responses. Thanks, both to you and Jean-Louis. We also have one other question from Abdallah, and he says, at what stage of startup growth we have to think seriously to have a real strategy? So when do we start? When do we continue? When do we...
Day one.
Yes.
Day one. Come on, guys. Day one. For sure, day one. Do you know what? You know why? Because at least you're preventing that, remember at day one, you might have that family and friends and fools like me and Jean-Louis putting that 5K ticket into your dream. Guess what? You're trying to save that money and spend it for as much as you can. So why would you wait until something grows by luck or whatever? No, strategy has to be from day one. And you can brainstorm collectively and say, guys, we decided to go to UK and we're saying that we're going nowhere, as an example, from a go-to-market strategy. Or we decided that maybe version 1.2 has enough features to be released out there for the proof of concept. That is a strategy as well, but from a product management perspective, right? So my nutshell answer that it's from day one. That's what I have to say.
Of course, I will agree with that. Now, what I may add to this answer, so when you are with a company and the company will grow, which is what most companies are looking for, you need to be more organized. So step by step, look at how to think about the strategy and how to organize it. When the company will be large enough, then you will have a board. You will have effectively something which is well organized. But in between, go step by step. One of the first things when it's not already existing, when I arrive, I'm involved with a new company, a new entrepreneur, I'm asking, do you have some type of advisory board? And if the answer is yes, the next question is, how are you organized? Is it just some key people with great experience that you are calling from time to time, or do you have a process? So this is not because we are talking about strategy and growth. Strategy is always important, but here, even if we are discussing about the execution in general, the way this is driven should be very clear and very clear to everyone, which is involved inside and outside with any given entrepreneur.
Actually, Jean-Louis just said something interesting with the last sentence.
Thank you.
You entrepreneur out there, you're lucky enough to live in the era of getting a mentor from external world. I think it's the most amazing, humbling moment when you guys are feeling maybe going in a circle or this happens. It happens to every single project that I dealt with out there. But when somebody comes from outside, think about it as that magical view. If you put a camera and you're going 360, most of us are only capable to see the world at 180-degree angle. So when you bring an external eye, it might, by luck, sometimes by coincidence, but most of the time, it's really enable you to think different and say, I did not see that we're going wrong in the software releases or in the cloud way of delivering our product, or going to the wrong country. That external eye is always useful. So that's why mentorship, you really have to reach out in your own country, in your own town. That person, I always laugh about it. Somebody like me who lost his hair, or like my friend Jean-Louis, you have some gray hair. Yeah, you still have gray hair on the side.
Yeah,
so that's my piece of wisdom for you guys. Don't shy away with it. I mean, there's always somebody that come in completely detached, but from your passion that you are on a day-to-day, you have a lot of things running for you, and suddenly somebody will come from outside and say, hey, did you realize that maybe this is where the pain point is in your company and in your strategy to change? Sarah.
Absolutely. I would like to emphasize that the importance of mentorship or just actually just a few friendly advices. Sometimes it's really important to just get the external perspective, and sometimes it can be directional. You know, sometimes the strategy or even a certain part of vision of the company can change based on the insights being brought by the 360 perspective. So absolutely, absolutely. We have a few more additional comments by Abdella based on everything that she shared with us so far. He had a few comments about the changes from stage to stage when it comes to company development. And he also added the question, is there a difference in strategy when we are working on innovative services or product? So how do we relate strategy to services and products?
I'll let Jean-Louis take that. Is a blue ocean type strategy.
Yeah, it's almost a blue ocean. So I will take that, and maybe you may come back to the previous one, which is also a good question about the strategy from a stage to stage. So to answer your question, Abdallah, and to everyone, is there a difference in strategy when you are working with an innovative company? The short answer is yes, of course. This is not the same at all than running any other business. Why I'm saying that? I'm saying that that's very basic, very simple. If you are talking about innovative services or product, you are trying to do something new. You are trying to solve a new way a customer problem, because that's what business are about overall. You are always trying to solve a customer problem. And if you are trying to do it a new way, that's great. That's why we are all here on this webinar. This is what we love. Now, you will have far less examples how to do it because you are almost the first one to do it in this particular way. Having said that, and this is where I will come back to the tools, and thanks to Marcel, who teased me with one more time with the blue ocean strategy. So by the way, there are some other tools, some other strategic tools. So I'm not saying that we need to spend a lot of time only using strategic tools, but the tools like the blue ocean strategy, as I had the opportunity to tell you a little bit earlier what it is, they are done and they are working for long time. They are working, there are processes that you can use. So going back to your question, yes, there are differences, but the tools to be used to help you could be almost the same, which will help you into looking at a specific way, market strategy overall, and find some of the best ways. Now, there is only one way to know if this is the correct strategy. This is to try it on the market. This is to try it with customers. The only voice which is important, back to you, and you must listen to this voice. This is the voice of your customers. Marcel, I will let you maybe go back to whatever the previous question. Also, I think which will need to be answered.
Yeah, they all fit together nicely. It's a little bothering to change that all the time, the strategy from stage to stage. Yeah, I agree with you, but I'm going to challenge the person who wrote that there is a very big likelihood that you're changing all the time because maybe you did not put both the market fit and the customer pain point in the heart of your strategy. How many companies, I'm sorry, I'm not going to give you a name this time, but how many companies out there that are absolutely obsessed that their invention, their product, their solution is the best in the world and they have no competitor out there? How many people thought that way and they failed? And the reason why I'm basically giving a tip again to entrepreneur, you remember that feature list, a nice to have? Well, guess what? Stop saying it's a nice to have. That's not an internal debate. That's not an internal debate. Go to the customer or your prospect. And by the way, here's the good news. Most customer pain points, most of the list of the prospect list that you have, just be humble and just have that quality listening. Go and ask them a stupid question. What is your pain point? What are your challenges? Is it a CapEx reduction issue? Is it an OpEx issue? Is it a new market play? Is it a new application? Is it because you're expanding? It doesn't matter. You'll be pleasantly surprised that most prospects, they're more than happy to share with you what they're looking for. So I always put the customer in the middle of that before I come back and talk about strategy. I'm going to give you some concrete stuff from a use case. I lived through it. And again, sorry, Sarah, talking about the new generation versus the senior guys by age, that's all. There's a lot of young, smart people out there. Think about 1994. Maybe most of you were not born. 1994, it was the first insertion of internet. 1994, it's a key year where, thanks to that, we have internet everywhere. And there was a rush for small companies to build what we call an ISP, an Internet Service Provider service. But here's the good news, where I'm going to basically look at the innovation a la Blue Ocean and a market fit and what I call disruptive thinking. Think always about that disruptive thinking. There was a solution, technical solution, called Cisco. They put a router, they put thousands of cables on the router, and they have external modem boxes, if you remember, to do that dial-up services. Well, guess what? That technology existed. And Cisco starts selling what they used to call a POP in the box, a point of presence in a box. It's a rack full of routers, thousands of cables, another rack full of boxes. Just think about that image. You don't have to be technical to understand that. And here's a young lady, Jeanette Simon, CTO, to the ladies, that challenged the biggest ISP in the US called UUNet. And he says, oh my God, what is spaghetti junction that you have? Spaghetti junction means all those bloody cables out there. And she challenged the CTO. She says, do you know you're paying a lot of electricity in this room by having multiple boxes? Do you know that your CapEx and OpEx are absolutely huge? And by the way, the single point of failure, even today, is that cable. Just scary stuff. Think about that plane that we all fly. Well, guess what? Miles and miles of cables are there. And the single point of failure is the cable. Well, guess what? The CTO looked at her and says, hey, can you do better than this? And with a smile, the answer, yes, I can do better than this. So technology existed. Cisco was selling boxes and boxes and boxes, and there were millions of revenue. And this lady, Jeanette Simon, says, I'm going to take a Cisco router-like box. I'm going to look what's inside the box. And she found that on the motherboard, there's a lot of space, empty space, in the same physical box. And Jean-Louis used to work for a microelectronic company. You don't understand what she thought about in 1994. Texas Instruments chipset, a chipset that is a modem, the first announced modem in a chipset. She put 400 of them. So guys, you don't have to be techies. Think about this room full of racks and racks, modems boxes, and suddenly the same rack, for each box, 400 modems in a chipset. Ascend went from nothing over 4 years to 1.7 billion. And they were acquired in 1999 by Lucent Technology, who became Alcatel-Lucent. They disappeared, by the way, for 21 billion. You can Google the information, and now you have the inside story. So why am I saying that? Open innovation, it doesn't mean that you're creating a new invention that never existed. And the same thing I repeat for the Wi-Fi story I told you. Wi-Fi existed back in 2001. It was just somebody thinking, what can I do to change so Wi-Fi can go upwards? That's all. So think about when you're an entrepreneur, you're not trying to create for the first time something new. Think about the existence and disruptive thinking. Disruptive thinking. That's why I always say that one. And by the way, you can be disruptive in every walk of life. the way we give us class, the way we can sell, the way we bank, the way we shop. We're all capable of disruptive thinking.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Marcel and Jean-Louis. Related to being disruptive, changing things, using certain strategy for a certain amount of time, and also testing this strategy to see if it works or not, or doesn't. How long should we do that before we move to another version? How long should we stick with one strategy? How long should we stick with one path before we change and adapt?
Jean-Louis.
Yeah, okay, so thanks, Marcel. We'll continue to answer. I believe I touched already on this point when I tried to explain that you need to set a strategy and stick to the strategy for 2 months, 4 months, 6 months. So there is not one answer with a given time that will work for everyone. What is important, this is important that you try any new thinking, strategy, disruptive idea to make the link with what Marcel was just saying for the right amount of time. And this amount of time is not something which is easy. You need to set right up front and to stick to it for how long you will try it. Because if it works, then you may say, okay, I said, I'm going to try it for 2 months. And with only this small group of customers, it works. Let's apply it to all the customers. And in fact, it doesn't work for everyone. Or the other way around, after a couple of weeks, doesn't work. So what I'm going to do? Well, I'm not going to wait and to waste 2 months. Actually, this is not waste time. You do need to listen to your customers. I think both of us, Marcel and I, we said that really a couple of times, because the key, the only key, I think I said that again, but the only key to make sure you have the right strategy, this is to get the feedback from customers, users, depending on the type of market. And to be concrete and to give also to you, and I hope that will help you to better understand. I'm going to share with you an example, which is something of this month, September. So I'm not looking back a couple of years ago. Every year in September, I'm part of an entrepreneurship program for new master students from Paris Tech, which is a top university in France. So they are technical, they are either from the top chemical universities, and they want to become an entrepreneur. This year, like every year, we started the 1st of September. So it's only 2 weeks. Okay. And this year, I do have 4 groups which are working on 4 different startup ideas. So guess what? What I asked them just after the first week, when they were struggling about how I'm going to do that, is what we have in mind, is this something we'll be able to monetize? Are we going to be able to really have a business plan? Because the goal for them, this is to pitch in January. So they will have up to January to have their business plan. After less than 1 week, when I see there are enough ideas, business ideas, then thinks about their customers, I ask them to come back. And this is what I have just done with them this week with their first customer interviews or their future customers interviews. So that's why, to me, this is so important. So going back to your question, and I will let Marcel add how long to stick with a strategy, that should be part of one piece of your strategy. Decide for how long it will have some effect, so you can go to your customer, to your market, and listen And then you can decide to change or not, if it's working or not. Marcel,
the way I answer that question is very simple. Ask yourself the following question. Mr. Customer A and B and C are telling me most of the time what they're looking for. And I'm going to go back with the team together and put a sales strategy based on what I have from a product perspective, a solution perspective, and apply that particular strategy. This is the way we're going to do it. Here's how it goes. One of the problems I see many times that the technical team, the product management team, they put so many features out there, they think they're going to be selling more. And they forget to go back to the customer and ask, Mr. Customer, I have this particular solution that I think will do the job. Could you tell me if I show you this, this, and this functionality in this time frame? By the way, this document I'm mentioning is called the statement of work. This is an agreement between you and the customer. If I show you these features, by this time, would you buy it? You'd be amazed how many entrepreneurs are shying away by asking, would you buy? They stay and get stuck there for proof of concept for many months, and that could derail the whole company. So going back to your question, how long are you going to be sticking to that strategy? Honestly, it's all about trial and error. I'm going to go further than that. Think about what is the difference between a proof of concept agreement and try and buy. You'd be amazed, a huge difference, because the try and buy are only those customers that really want to buy, are interested in what they heard from you. Proof of concept in general, they go there for years and years and years, and you're not going to be successful. So sales strategies, for how long? It depends on you, how much data you have collected from the customer range that can match what you're trying to pitch from a product and solution perspective. Sometimes it's 6 months, like my friend Jean-Louis said, and he said something interesting. You've got to stick to it. You have to be disciplined. You have to be disciplined, because if one of the team members disagree with you, then that could be of danger, that it could derail the whole thing. So you have to stick to it. You said 90 days, it's going to be 90 days. Collect the data. Where are you with it? From a feature perspective, from a revenue perspective, etc., etc. So that's my insight there.
Wonderful. Thanks. We also have a little bit of a discussion on the topic as well. We have an addition by Adam Hodgic. He said CSO and team need to work closely with CEO office to see how effective strategy will be in 2, 4, 6 months. So Adam agrees with you as well, and he added a little bit of his own, a few of his own thoughts.
Yes.
Thank you, Adam.
And by the way, a good entrepreneur, founder, CEO, leader, from my humble experience, I can name a few. They were absolutely inspiring, and they need to put their ego level, especially the intellectual ego level, to give room to those introvert, creative people that he already have in his team, to basically say 1 + 1 = 3 and be successful. A lot of founders, sometimes unfortunately, they swear by saying, over my dead body, this is the route we're going to go. And a lot of stats, especially from MIT and for all the big business schools, data is there. There's a difference between empowerment style management and dictatorship. You know, maybe sometimes it does work. This is the way, this we're going to go. I think you need to be more empowering people so their skills and their creativity can be much more successful for the company.
Amazing. These are just such great and empowering words to be shared. So thanks a lot. I also know that Adi has a few words for us to share. He also said, thank you everyone for your questions. For further questions and comments, feel free to write to us at info@absl.ba. So Adi, would you like to share your thoughts with us now?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Jean-Louis and Marcel, for your time and this wonderful lecture of yours. I would not call it a lecture. It was better to say a life lesson when it comes to business. It was really a pleasure listening to you. And to the community, thanks for attending. We are coming back to you in a few weeks with another event from our IT club, so stay tuned. And until then, enjoy the recording from today's session, which will be available very soon on our official channels. And of course, for any further questions, feel free to contact us or our partners at Ministry of Programming. Once again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks to you. Thanks to you, Adi, Sarah, and all the team. That was a pleasure.
Pleasure was mine.
Thank you very much. It's a true pleasure to just participate, share, exchange, and work together. So thanks a lot.